From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
We are here to balm your soul, and what the hell, let's bomb it. This is the Badass Counseling Show, and my name is Sven Erlandson. I am the host of it, and I am joined in studio wherever you are. We are joining you. Wish you were here with us. Studio wouldn't be enough to host all of you, but it sure would be fun to try. Wherever you're tuning in from, and one of the 7 continents or the 7 seas or what have you, it's great to have you here. I'm joined in studio by my fellow producers, KC, silent in the booth, and Rob the Rocket next to me. Rob, what say ye?
I'm doing all right, Sven. Truth be told, I have been thinking of the Crosby, Stills, and Nash song Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, because sometimes I feel it's getting to the point where I'm no fun anymore. But you're not here to counsel me. We have others that are waiting in line. So
I do not buy that. I do not buy that there is a day where you will be fun no more.
Yeah, all right, I'm working on it.
So listen, I had a listener of our show. My assistant, Kate, sent me an email that we had gotten from a listener of the show who was commenting on earworms, and she says she has a surefire hack to get rid of earworms.
Is that right? What is it?
It's simply when she starts getting an earworm, she goes immediately and she listens to the song on Spotify or Pandora, or whoever she listens to her songs on, and then the earworm goes away.
You know what? That would not work with the Cars for Kids jingle. That's the most horrible earworm ever invented.
Was that like a commercial from when you were a kid or something?
No, it's still on, and I don't want to talk about it or even think about it. I'm sorry I brought it up.
Well, you know, I'm from the far north, and when I moved out here to the East Coast, for whatever reason, my girlfriend had a New York City commercial in from when she was a kid back in the 60s and 70s, and the jingle went, it wasn't even a jingle, it was their sort of thing, like Have a Kick-Ass Day is for me. Theirs was Raceway Park.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Raceway Park, I guess, was a thing in the New York City area.
Exit 56, Enema Riches. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
I'll be diggity doggone. Well, Rob, enough madness. Let's get some work done, my man.
All right, then.
Tell us about Kenny and Marin.
All right, let me start with Marin, who wrote in with the subject line, Relationship with God and This Work. And Marin said, can you help me understand how this work connects to a relationship with God? I believe in God, but I also believe in the science behind how our brains work. I'm currently in a coaching course where I'm learning the fundamentals of what you teach, and I'm struggling to see how they tie together. I have faith, but I feel like I have more faith in the work you're doing, and I'm not sure how to balance believing in both. There's a part of me that feels stubborn and even ashamed for trusting this work more than I trust in God. I'm really grappling with how to integrate both perspectives. I also believe that we sometimes allow the devil to take control. But at the same time, I think that the subconscious beliefs we hold aren't necessarily the work of the devil. They're just a part of how powerful our brains are. If our beliefs are subconscious, how does that relate to the devil's influence? I'm trying to make sense of how these concepts coexist. Thank you. And we also heard from Kenny, who said, I'm in my early 30s and live in the UK. I've been unhappy for the best part of my relationship of 6 years for 12 months and have wrestled with the decision to leave for the past 6 months. We both have our demons and neither of us are angels, but I feel like I am at a point where I've been consistently disrespected, mothered, and undermined in front of our kids. 2 of them are my stepkids, a 12-year-old, a boy, and a 9-year-old girl, and a 16-month-old daughter we have together. I regularly imagine or maybe fantasize what my life would be like as a single father, away from the toxicity that I feel in my life and that my young daughter could start to see from both my partner and her children at times. That life makes me feel lighter and invigorated, but through fear of the upheaval, confrontation, and perception, as well as navigating the things my partner says I'm doing, I find myself constantly second-guessing and living in a world of what if. Thanks for your time, and keep kicking ass.
Well, thank you, I will. Kenny and Marin, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. Great to have you here. I'm going to start with you, Kenny, and I'm just going to start right where you sort of started. You said, I've been unhappy for the best part of my relationship of 6 years For 12 months. I've been unhappy for 12 months. I got to ask a question, and that's simply, if you've been in this relationship for 6 years, but you've been unhappy for 12 months, why 12 months? Why not 18 months? Or why did the unhappiness start at 12 months ago? Why not 18 months ago? Why not a month and a half ago? Why 12 months ago?
So 12 months ago was when it really started to accelerate and get to the point where 12 months ago was where I had the first thought of, I can't do this anymore.
Okay, so it had already been going on prior to then. That's when it began to, that's when you sort of hit critical mass of, I can't do this anymore. Okay, so that raises the question for me then. You just said that's when it got so big that I had that, I got to go. Okay, well, you start thinking about going. All right, that means it's been building up. When did you first start to feel like this sucks? Or this is more than just, gee, we're having a shitty problem, the last few weeks. When did you start to notice an accrual, a building up? How long ago?
6 to 8 months ago.
Nope. No. Stop. You said that 12 months ago, so in beginning of 2024, you're at the point where it's like, fuck, man, I can actually think about getting the fuck out of here. I can think about that, which means it had been building up prior to that. The problems had been building prior to that. And what I want to know is prior to 12 months ago, when did you first start? Yeah, I probably phrased it wrong. I apologize. Prior to that, when is the very earliest you recall the problems were more than, gee, we just had a shitty argument this week? When did it first recall like, oh, this is not good? Like more than just, oh, we had an argument. When did it first really start to register even a little bit?
Probably midway through 23, maybe a little earlier.
So we're talking about almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah, and why then? Why not 4 years ago? Why not 6 months ago? Why 2 years ago did really the troubles start?
Just, it kind of got to a point where been an undertone for our relationship where the conversation of how I was spoken to, the tone that was used, some of the words, that has always been a kind of floating thing through our relationship. And then in that time, when it started really getting mean, really, and some of the things that were said and, really hurt me for the kind of first time.
Fair enough. And so it had been there and you noticed it was there, but this is when it started getting mean and it was really starting to hurt and so forth. Can you give me one example? Talk to me in the way that she has talked to you for the last 2 years. Like, let's say I just screwed up. Talk to me.
One that stands out, the first and foremost one, is we were having a disagreement about curtain poles. And she called me a piece of shit.
Mm.
And I say about things happen and time sort of freezes and you kind of think, what's going on? I had that in that moment.
And was the calling you a piece of shit, there's no excuse for that. I'm curious, were you guys in the middle of the fight when she called you that? Or was it just randomly, just like 1 or 2 sentences of context for that? Not that that's okay. I'm not saying that.
we were, I'd gone and ordered some curtain poles. She decided that she didn't like them and I should have just maybe spoken to her about it. And I kind of said like, okay, fine. Like, she was getting the tones and stuff were happening because it just seemed to happen all the time. So I just kind of backed off and I was like, okay, fine. Like, was back, get different ones. And then she started rolling with, it's not about the curtain poles. It's about you fighting me on it. And I was like, honestly, I'm trying not to fight, just take them back. And then it was, I was a piece of shit for argument and kind of making it worse.
Okay.
I truly believe I wasn't.
Okay, so she had said it's not about the curtain poles, it's about you fighting back.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And so she doesn't like the idea of you What? Having an opinion, standing up for what you think? Is that it? Are you expected to be subservient? Is that what we're talking about? Because you did use the word mothering before, that you've been consistently disrespected and mothered. So in other words, are you expected to sort of be silent and not, quote unquote, talk back and not have boundaries or have opinions? Is that what we're talking about here?
It often felt like when I voiced my feelings about boundaries that up me feeling wrong for doing so. And I would often feel like I would come away from a conversation where I tried to bring up those feelings where I felt like I'd twisted around, and all of a sudden I was like, yeah, fair enough, I see your point, and it would mellow out, and I almost kind of felt like I'd and come round, and I'd be like, what kind of just happened?
All right, I want to ask you one more question, then I'm going to flip over to Marin here. The question I want to ask you is, and it's kind of fucked up. You're being mistreated. It sounds like, from where I'm sitting. All right, you're being spoken down to. Your power is being. She's trying to create a power imbalance, and it sounds like by now she actually has one, where she has the power and she doesn't like the idea of there being equal power and equal conversation. Not that you're wanting power. It's not necessarily some power grab, but it's like when one person is being disrespected and mistreated, you in this case, the other person clearly has power. But I want to ask you, straight question, what is your fear in standing up to her, and not only standing up to her, but standing up and not backing down? What do you most fear happening if you stand up and just say, no, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I'm not backing down on this. This is what I believe in this case. What do you fear happening? Her exploding, her giving you the silent treatment, her leaving, her bitching at you, her putting you down, being mean? What is it you most fear happening if you stand up and don't back down?
Two things. One is definitely going through that feeling of being twisted around and feeling like I lost the argument, sort of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is definitely the perception that she has of me, and potentially the perception of others. I will caveat this by saying that I haven't had a chance to say this yet, but my situation has somewhat changed from my email, because I did actually leave her a few days ago.
Wow. You go, girlfriend. Yeah. Wow.
So,
well, I tell you what. Okay. Well, I want to hear that. Okay. We're going to hear about what led to, it sounds like you don't even need me now. Hell, you're off the show. You're fired.
True,
whatever.
No, not true.
Okay. No, I'm going to come back to you. I want to hear about that. I left her. Wow. In a bold stroke. I tell you what. Boy, the guy could have saved us a little bit of time there. I'm just teasing. Kenny. All right. I'm going to come back to you, though, on that, all right? We're going to pick up right there. Marin, so you're wrestling with God and wrestling with this work and self-healing work and God stuff and so forth. You open by saying, can you help me understand how this work connects to a relationship with God? I believe in God, but I also believe in the science of how our brains work. I'm currently in a coaching course where I'm learning the fundamentals of what you teach, and I'm struggling to see how they tie together. I have to ask, who is teaching a coaching course teaching the fundamentals of what I teach? I didn't even know one existed.
Well, I mean, the same things that you teach.
Got it.
In general.
Got it. Okay. So then the fundamental conflict in you, if you were to, because I'm hearing this back and forth, like I believe in and I see the fruits of doing this sort of inner soul work, but I also believe in God. So you clearly believe there's a tension here. And so if you were to define that tension in one tight sentence, what for you is the struggle? What's the thing that isn't quite making sense here?
I think that I'm lacking faith, I guess. It's hard to put into a sentence. Other people have this faith, and obviously we have our walks with God are different. Our journeys are different. But somebody who has more faith and they're in the Bible, they could take out the stuff that learning in the coaching course in the Bible. But that doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
And I also, the looking good, like I'm going to look bad if, I don't have a relationship with God, or not that I wouldn't, but
let me ask you this. First of all, one of the things, so I'm assuming you're Christian. You're coming at this from a Christian perspective. Is that right? Or Jewish? Okay, Christian. Okay. And so you're struggling with feeling potentially lack of faith, how does that mix with this sort of work? And then also, how do I look? Is it about looking good, if I don't have a relationship with God and so forth? Isn't it fascinating that you just said that? We have two completely different fucking stories, yours and Kenny's. And you just said, and how does it look if I don't have a relationship with God? Sort of that impressions or perceptions. And Kenny literally just said, I'm fearful of my wife's perception of me and others' perception of me. Motherfucker. Who could have possibly known that two completely different things? And neither of those were written up. Kenny did mention perception in one word on his write-up, but who could have possibly known? So here, perception is part of the equation of both of what you're writing into. And we're going to hit on that because I sensed that in Kenny's before, and we're going to get to that, but here it is in yours as well. And really, honestly, that's such a big deal in people's faith. And regularly, when I'm counseling people who were raised in religious homes, oftentimes, not always, oftentimes they will describe their father or describe their mother as, well, they were phony Christians. They were fake religious people. They put on a good show. Right? But it's not just the religious folk. It's not just the Christian folk. You hear it from the yoga people all the time. Struggling with, how do I look? Is my pose right? What are other people thinking? So it's that. It's all of us in every walk of life. But it's especially true, in religion as a former pastor. And so you're struggling with this whole thing of faith. Let me ask you this. Well, let's first do this. Even the most rudimentary understanding of the Bible, whether you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim, all of them track back to Abraham. Even the most rudimentary understanding of the Bible knows that back in Bible times, if someone was wounded, they would bind up their wounds, right? They would, wrap it to stop it from bleeding. Okay. That's one thing that they would do. Even when Jesus was on the cross, the soldiers offered him some hyssop. It was basically to numb him. It was sort of get him high a little bit, sort of like morphine might be, so that he wouldn't feel his pain as much. Those are interesting things. They're based on a little bit of fucking science of their times. They knew that you stop the fucking bleeding. They knew that if you want to engage in pain reduction, give them hyssop. Oh. So even in the Bible, they are using science. They're using the accumulated knowledge of the people up to that point. So even in the Bible, we don't see a denunciation of science. But that's not even really what you're saying in your write-up. You're basically talking about how does all this healing stuff that I'm talking about, is sort of what you're saying, jive with the whole thing. One of the things I have every single one of my clients sign is a confidentiality agreement, an NDA. And what I talk about in there that they need to understand in advance is that every sort of healing path has different language. And I have people who are atheists, agnostics, Christian, Muslim. I've had imams as my client. I've had rabbis, psychiatrists, you name it. And I can speak any of those languages, so to speak. And I just loosely construed so that we can all sort of be on the same page. I'll speak your language, but we're talking about sort of what I call it. You're coming from the Christian perspective, so I'm going to use your language, okay? The God voice deep inside. One of the things back when I was a pastor is I would ask people, when you've experienced miracles in the past, before you can, we're all wanting to know God's will for our lives. Back when I was a pastor, we all want to know, God, what's your will for my life? But until you can know how God communicates to you, you can't know what God is communicating to you. And so I would ask each person in the group, or if it was a large group, I'd ask them to write down for themselves, how does God communicate with you? And people say, well, through the Bible. Or if they were Catholic, they'd say, through Scripture, but also through tradition and, through papal decree and so forth. And I say, yeah, but the problem with the whole Bible thing is I guarantee you nowhere in the Bible does it say the name Sven Erlandson, you should accept a job in San Diego. Sven Erlandson, you should have 3 kids, not 5 kids. Doesn't say that anywhere because I know my name's not in the Bible. And I'm so vain that I've looked. The point is, so what have we got? We've got sort of meta principles that we then have to sort of meter out or apply, interpret for my specific situations. Okay, so now there's a measure of interpretation. It's not cut and dry. My father, who was a pastor for almost 70 years, used to say, you can get the Bible to say anything if you take a small enough amount of it. Okay, so what's my point? My point is, how does God talk to you? Well, one way is through the Bible, but it still has to resonate inside of you. Some people, God speaks through coincidence, timing. They bump into something or they'll read something somewhere and it jumps out at them. But in all of those situations, what do they have in common? There is a resonation inside of them that it just feels like heavier, more powerful, like God is talking. In other words, in all those cases, they feel it. In all of them. Coincidence, timing, something jumps out at you, somebody says something and you feel it. So every time we're experiencing, think about your own fucking self. Don't take my word for it. Anytime you have ever felt that God was talking or communicating with you, you felt it. Maybe you questioned it up in your melon, but in the end, you felt it in here. So what I am in the business of is this feel in here. I want to help you feel that feel more. Because I believe God, if you're a God person, or your own spirit, or universe, or higher power, or Tao, or fucking, Shiva, whatever your language is, communicates from within. Ultimately. That's where the resonation is. And so all my work is, and this I tell people all the time, my work is just one thing. If you remember nothing else that I tell you, just get all the shit out of you that doesn't resonate with you. And what is the origin of most of that shit? Back there. Childhood, or in Kenny's case, some of it we know has been there in the last 6 years in this relationship. But what we're going to discover potentially as we go in a little further with Kenny is that it went long before 6 years ago, that everything before that was a setup for this. He was taught to silence his own fucking voice and eat shit. Okay, so let me ask you then one more question, Marin, before we cut to break. And that is, what is it that you're struggling with most in all of this equation?
I think that I feel like I should be reading the Bible. And I don't, I've always said I don't have any interest in reading in the Bible. I like to read passages or different things.
Okay. And so you feel like you're a bad Christian then, or a bad...
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
But then the people who talk about God and they talk about God and they talk about God and they talk about nothing else.
Yeah.
I don't know why that drives me crazy.
Because it fucking annoys the fucking shit out of you, just like all the rest of us.
And then I feel guilty.
Why? Because you get annoyed by things? Fucking Kenny gets annoyed by his fucking wife. And you're not saying you're annoyed by God. Although sometimes I get fucking annoyed by God. If you believe in God, it's pretty hard to have a relationship with God when you're wanting God to do X or do Y, and God's saying, nah, I want to fucking do Q today. And you're like, no, you have so much power. I don't get a say in it. No, just do X or Y, please. Nah, fuck off, human. Okay, so no. And let me tell you what my dad used to say. My dad, pastor all these years, World War II generation, right? Passed away in his 90s. And I had 3 uncles who were clergy, 4 uncles who were clergy, and one was a missionary in Ecuador. And Dad used to love to tell this little story that, Dad had grown up in the farms during World War II, right? Great Depression and all that. He'd love to tell the story about the country pastor who was driving home after church on a Sunday morning. And he sees old Farmer Elmer driving on his tractor down the dirt road. He stops and he says, Elmer, we missed you in church today. Elmer said, yeah, Pastor. Well, I figured I could have been in church thinking about my fields, or I could have been in my fields thinking about God. And the country pastor says, I like that, Elmer. Have a blessed day. And Elmer said, have a blessed day, Pastor. Right. That's all right.
Like that.
It's about communication with God in the way you communicate with God, in the way, more importantly, God communicates with you. As I said earlier, you can want to know God's will, but the question that has to precede it is, how does God generally communicate with you? Because the truth is, you have plenty of biblical precedent that God communicated differently with each of the different disciples. Paul, who was, sort of the 13th apostle, whatever, who really has got the sort of moniker of having the grand salesman of the Bible. He just, fucking evangelized the world, all that. Paul, he got the blessing of getting knocked off his ass on the way to Damascus, right? Bolt of fucking light from heaven, knocked off his fucking donkey. I'd love to have that. That'd be awesome. Make it easy. Fuck, give me a light from fucking heaven, man. There were people at Jesus' baptism. They got to see the heavens open, God talk, a dove descend, and Jesus right there. It is the only time in the entire Bible where you have the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost present. Fuck, if you can't fucking believe after that, you're fucked. I'd love to have that. That'd be great. No, God speaks differently to each one of us. And some people feel God most in the serenity of the woods. Some people, it's on an ocean beach, right? I feel it most when I'm just in fucking counseling and I can finally break through to someone and see the beauty of who they really are, who God meant them to be. And it's just a million fucking things. And God has called you to be you, not to be some fucking other version that works for somebody else. And as far as the God language, oh, fucking hell, man. I'm 57, grew up in the 70s, 5 older siblings, and we're all like, oh, fucking hate the Jesus freaks and the Bible bangers. And we're preachers' kids. It annoyed my parents too, So it's just like, there's no right or wrong. And you know what? If the church that you go to, if you still want to go to church, find a different one that suits you better. But the bottom line is there's no one way to worship. There's no one way to communicate or to hear God's voice. It's to be who God has called you to be, and only you can know that. No one knows what the voice of God is speaking to you inside of you. No one can possibly know that. Not me, not anyone else, because God has a different message for every single person, or higher power has a different message for every person, or the universe, whatever you want to fucking call it. We're all called to different things. Peter was called to a different thing from Paul. Stephen the martyr was called to a different thing. He was called to get his ass handed to him like 2 minutes into the fucking race of Christianity, right? Yet he got remembered. Well, thanks, but I got to be fucking dead. But everybody had a different fucking role, right? What sense does it make if we're all the fucking same? So you're called, and if you're listening to people, all these external power sources, and this applies to you, but in a different way, Kenny. But Marin, if you're listening to all these external power sources, human sources, at the expense of, and because you're afraid of how the people will perceive you, if you're doing it at the expense of God's voice inside of you, then you're basically saying, fuck you to God. You're saying, suck it, God, suck it. You're basically saying, I am more afraid of humans than I am of the entity, if you believe in the entity, that created all the forces of the fucking universe. That takes some brass balls on your part. It's like, well, shit, Sven, you put it that way, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to, deal with people and what they will think and so on and so forth. And that's why this notion of authenticity, and why I write in the book that God put a computer chip in each one of us, so to speak. And on that is written who you are supposed to be. God created you to be you, not to be somebody else's chip. And so the grand task of life is to de-wire yourself, in Kenny's case, from his wife, or from a parent, or from what society will say, or what society says a man should be, or a woman say, and wire yourself into yourself and become your authentic self, who God made you to be. So in this setup, there's really no devil per se. It's just fear of being who I really am. Well, much more to come right after this short break.
I've been doing some real healing work in my life, and I mean hardcore. But I've been craving something new to level up. A friend of mine told me about this badass counselor. I gotta admit, I rolled my eyes. Then I watched a few of his videos, and yes, this is the guy. I went and got his audiobook, Badass Wisdom. Holy shit. Absolute ass-kicking, inspiring, deep, powerful shit, period. If you don't get this book, you're making a huge mistake. So do you got the guts to go big with your self-care? Go to badasscounseling.com, get the book Badass Wisdom now.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
We are back. Kenny, tell me, you said that since you wrote into the show, you have since left her. Tell me what led up to it, and what's the story there, brother?
Coming into New Year, it actually kind of got a little better. And my partner started doing a little bit of work on herself. She had some acknowledgement and some accountability. But I realized that overwhelming feeling of I'm all checked out. I'm all energized out. I didn't have it in me anymore to fight back. It was one of your episodes, along with a conversation with my sister, that came together and just hit me, and it has to be today. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now, and it's recent, but I feel relieved. Yeah.
And how is your daughter doing?
She's okay. Yeah, she's great. She's young enough for it to not really be understood by her just yet, but at a point where that was another kind of big moment. I wanted to get out before I knew she would start picking up on it.
Yeah. That's good. At 16 months, 18 months, that's a very young age. It'll be normalized. Potentially it already is. And it's an adjustment, and she'll just grow up with parents in two different places. And hopefully both of those parents are doing their own healing work and just being sort of endless fonts of love to her. And so you had mentioned that right around the holidays and after, it started to get better, and she was working on herself and she had accountability. Why then? What had changed in the situation between the two of you or in her that now all of a sudden, hey, she's fucking found fucking Jesus and she's fucking changing? Why?
And again, this is where listening to one of your episodes linked in.
What was it?
Because I know that's why.
What was it in the episode?
With somebody called Trixie, and our scenarios were slightly different, but the messages of having had enough, and when you finally stand your ground, that's when things change. That isn't change necessarily for good, for real. Right.
Because they're doing it now because, oh shit, he's really standing up. So they know you're not fucking around. And so now, gee, I better change. And the truth is, if you had stayed at that point, it's very possible that if you didn't keep standing your ground every day, that person would slide right back into the old stuff. Because why? As I explained, you can change the surface behaviors, but if you don't change the actual core beliefs driving those behaviors, then you'll rubber band right back to the old behaviors. And so, you had sort of run your course. I got nothing left to give here. I want to ask you a question, though. If you were to go into a new relationship, okay, let's say 2 years from now, you're in a new relationship, would you want it to transpire the same way, where you wait to truly stand up for yourself after stuff has really, really, really gone to shit, and you're basically like, fuck, I can't do this anymore? Because that's what happened here. She didn't realize you meant fucking business until you already had one foot out the door. And that's when she changed. Would you still do that the same way the next time, or would you want to do it differently next time?
Hell no, it will not happen the same again.
Okay.
My boundaries so much more clearly now than I did 12 months ago, probably, or maybe less. I don't know. But
okay. And the only thing that is going to make those boundaries stick long term is you drilling down to discern where the fuck did it come from that I wasn't having boundaries in the first place. This wasn't a result of your partner. This got set up a long time ago, this notion that my voice isn't allowed. This notion that I need to back down, or this notion that I'm afraid of what she's going to think of me. And so that's where the drilling down needs to happen. I want to flop back over to Marin for a second. Marin, what have you been thinking about since you and I were talking before the break? What's going on inside of you? Where are you at?
I almost feel relieved. Like obviously what you say is not the truth, or,
Yeah, it's a total fucking crock of shit. Yeah, thanks. Fuck you too.
But it almost gave me permission to be okay with when you said, if it doesn't resonate with you, then it's not for you. I mean, basically that's what you said.
Yep.
And that just, I don't know, I feel relieved. I feel like, okay, if that doesn't resonate, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to feel guilt around it. Now, am I going to? Probably. I got to work through that. But because I have a lot of guilt all the time about different things. So.
Well, hold on right there. So let's make one little tweak there. Let's start changing your language. I have had a lot of guilt around a lot of stuff. Because as long as you keep using that language of I have,
Mm-hmm.
you're carrying it forward versus I have had, or I had a lot of guilt. Now we're beginning to transition from the past into the future. So it's just one little tweak you can make in your own language to become aware of. Does that make sense?
Oh, it definitely does, because I tell people that.
Okay, that's good. And right, very often we teach best what we most need to learn, right?
Yeah.
And so then in this relief, this notion of when we hear something and it speaks to our truth, it brings a sense of relief. And really all I really did was I was saying from my experience, and it gave you permission to be you. And so then that, well, yeah. And so you think about, you opened by saying, I'm taking this coaching course. Right. So then there are going to be people who need permission to be themselves so that they can experience the very same relief that you just felt 5 minutes ago. And what you're going to be in the business of is helping them find themselves, but very often what precedes finding myself is having permission to even have a self. Permission.
Right.
And so then that raises the question, Marin, who took away your permission to be yourself? Who taught you cannot do that which resonates inside of you? Now, it looks like you have our listeners can't see it, but it looks like you have a little shit-eating grin on your face, like you may have an answer to that. So I am curious, Miss Shit-Eating Grin, who took away your liberty to give yourself permission to act on that which resonates with you, to have your own voice? Who took it away?
My mom.
How? In what way above all else?
I didn't have a voice. I had no voice.
And how,
obviously
how was that executed? How was that executed?
I mean, I was locked in my room when I threw a tantrum. I, was spanked. I was, she just said whatever she said that, I don't know.
And what's the message?
Mostly.
What's the message the child gets, Marin?
They're not worthy.
Okay. And in a child's language, what might a child think in a child's language, in a 7-year-old's or a 10-year-old's language? Do your best.
Well, I remember writing down, I'm pretty sure I was 5 years old, I'm stupid and I hate myself. I hate my mom. I hate, she doesn't love me.
You had a parent. There was an adult in your life who taught a 5-year-old child to hate herself. Let's just all pause for a moment. The idea of a parent teaching a child, not just scolding a child because you stole 2 cookies. No. We're talking about something very different here. Teaching a child to hate themselves. That requires a certain level of malevolence. And listen up to this, Kenny, where she says that if I threw a tantrum, she would throw me in my room, lock me in my room. In other words, paralleling to your situation with the curtain rods, or poles as you call them over in your foreign land, that when I speak up, I get punished. When I speak up, I get punished. And Marin tells us she's getting punished at a very young age. She had the voice beat out of her. And I'm willing to bet, Kenny, that at some age you had your voice beat out of you. And so now, but the thing is, you haven't lost your voice. And Marin, you haven't lost your voice. Neither of you has. And you want to know how I know that? Because Marin, you said, but basically, you can feel that it bothers me. I'm sort of putting words in your mouth, but this is what I heard you say. It bothers me when people are like, God, 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 Jesus, 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 faith, 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 God, God, God. Oh my God, I want to fucking wring their necks. Right. That's your own voice. It basically saying there's got to be there are other ways to be a Christian other than just saying all the catchphrases all the fucking time. That's your own voice. So your voice never got extinguished. That was because the truth is, part of who I am is who I'm not. Remember, I write in my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. I write that there's that great word in the Hindi language. The great word, I believe, is, and I think it's a great word. The word is real. It's N-E-T-I, neti. And neti simply means not this. And so there are times in life, quite regularly, where I don't know what the path is, or I don't know what I want. I can only say, neti, 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 not this, not this, not this. The path to discovering who we are requires discovering who we're not. So what doesn't resonate with you is as much defining who you are as what does. So when something doesn't resonate, or it chafes, or it bleeds you, bores you, numbs you, sucks the fucking life out of you, or it's that job that you have to sit in your car on Monday morning just to fucking conjure up the fucking energy to walk in there. All right? That's your energy talking. That's your authentic self, your voice talking. So your mom didn't beat it out of you. And Kenny, when you're looking at those curtain poles and you're saying, but, or any other conversation, and you're speaking up, you haven't lost your voice. But she knew how to beat it right back out of you in that moment, because both of you had been conditioned at a very young age to shut the fuck up. And if you don't shut the fuck up, I will fucking silence you. I will use my power. And it's fascinating, Kenny, you actually use the word that your partner, who you're now separated from, mothered you. Mothered you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Kenny, who stole your voice? If yours was in fact stolen, who stole your voice? Or what messages did you receive from the adults?
So I have more memories of it being at school. I had anger management issues, and I went through anger management therapy as a little kid.
Just so I'm clear, hold on. Just so I'm clear, you went through anger management as a little kid. Nothing wrong with that. I did too. They made me see the school psychologist, okay? Just so I'm clear, to the best of your recollection and what they said then, did your anger management issues develop at school, or were they sort of already there and then they manifest at school?
I think they started at school.
Really? So then at home, you didn't have anger issues?
The only time I would have anger issues at home would be when my parents would like go out for the evening and I'd left with babysitters. Or I remember one incident where I actually like kicked my granddad in the shin and hurt him pretty badly because they were leaving, and I was, getting all angry and writhing that I didn't want them to leave. The only kind of memories I kind of have of being angry at home. I didn't
What would
really
happen?
fight with my sibling.
What would happen if you got angry at home?
I'd be sent to my room just to cool off sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, that would probably be the most common thing.
And was you being sent to your
It
room?
is.
Was your being sent to your room interpreted by the child you as a punishment?
Yeah.
And would there be a message that accompanied it, a verbalized message that accompanied the punishment?
Well, yeah, I suppose there would be usually. I don't remember any specifics, I guess.
Do your best.
Yeah.
What might one of the specifics have been, or remembering sort of the home you grew up in and the people who raised you, what likely would the specifics possibly have been?
Something along the lines of go and cool off, go up till you've calmed down.
And would that have been delivered by a parent with a calm demeanor, or would the parent have been a bit hot?
Say maybe it would a little stressed.
Yeah, because the way you delivered it was go calm down. I'm not hearing any heat in there. Right. And furthermore, just to back up, you said both when your parents would leave you with a babysitter or when your granddad would leave, then you kicked them in the shins. You didn't like being left.
I had parent separation anxiety as a child.
And why would a child have parent separation anxiety? Why would you not want them to leave? Take a shot at what might it be?
I know the answer to this.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't. Good. Tell me. What is it?
So the theory at the time was that news of 9/11 on the telly kind of programmed me to think that I was going to lose my parents anytime they left the house.
Okay.
That was the theory from the professionals at the time anyway.
But what's your theory?
I had an incredible childhood. My theory is that I just didn't want to not be around them.
Because? What did you get from being around them or hope to get from being around them?
Love. And
did you get love?
Yeah,
did you
love and
actually
support.
get
Yeah.
love? You did?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Really? Then why the fuck would you have anger issues?
I don't know.
Children shout loudest when feeling heard least. And so what I want to know is, because if this supposedly just developed at school, then that would seem to imply that your needs weren't being met. You weren't feeling seen, heard, loved at school. Yeah, but if your cup is being filled at home, then your need to get such a vast amount of love at school, that wouldn't make sense because your love cup would be full. So if you have this insatiable need at school that you're getting so fucking angry at school because your love needs, I need my love needs met, I need my love needs met. That's somebody who's desperate for fucking love. But if you're getting your love needs met at home, you're not going to be desperate for love at school. You're going to be, cool. You're going to be relaxed because you're full of love. Now, from where I'm sitting, something's fucking missing in the equation at home. And furthermore, you acting in your relationship with your partner that you just left, allowing someone to run over you like that tells me you got conditioned somewhere to shut the fuck up. Or you got... Go ahead. And then I'm going to flip over to Marin.
I don't want to...
Go ahead, Kenny. Go
I don't
ahead.
want to cut you off, but the only thing that springs to mind is before I had anger management issues and I got in some trouble, I have a surname that could cause... that I used to get bullied for a little bit when I was in early year school.
Okay, fair enough.
That is I don't know, maybe that's the thing that made me flip out of school a little bit and go the other way.
Okay, before I flip over to Marin, I want to ask you one question.
Sure.
If there were a flaw in the loving home theory, if there were a problem at home, and I'm not saying there was, but if there were a problem at home, what would it likely have been?
Without sounding like an asshole, maybe too much love? Like not enough? I don't know.
Too much love from whom? Too much love from whom?
Mum and dad.
Which one more than the other?
I mean, I would say mum, but purely because dad worked a lot more, not because he treated me badly.
Fair enough. I want to flip over to Marin here. Marin, so you've had a chance to think about it and your stuff. Where are you at now? What's going on inside of you?
I mean, I'm honestly listening to you and I'm trying to kind of figure out where Kenny's at. That's where I'm at, because that's honestly, if that's who I am. And I don't want to cry.
Wait a minute. Cry? Really? Really?
I cry
What do you
all
feel?
the time.
Good. Crying's good. Tell me the feeling word that you're feeling right now, Marin. Feeling word.
I don't even know if I could find a feeling word for it.
Well, start with the basics. Mad, sad, bad, glad, ornery, peace, calm, melancholy, rage-filled, ornery.
Maybe sad.
And what's the saddest part about what you're experiencing right now? What's going through you right now that is so sad?
I think because I don't give myself enough credit. Because I always said that I was stupid. And I'm good at what I do. I'm good at what I do. And why don't I give myself enough credit for it?
Because you were conditioned to not give yourself credit. You were conditioned to believe that you're dog shit. And it was a lie. I'm betting you've been around plenty of children in your life, Marin.
Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you the question. What is it that a 5 or 7 or 11-year-old could possibly do that would justify them believing that they suck and are inherently unlovable?
Nothing.
Right. So either that's true of all those children that you've known in your life, all of them, and thus it was true of you as well, or it was true of you, or it wasn't true of you, and all those children that you think are so fucking special are just dog shit too. Because you can hardly say they are all wonderful, but no, one child born to this earth in swaddling clothes, laying in a hospital little fucking baby bed named Marin, she was the one devil child who was truly dog shit. So either all those other kids are bad and you're bad too, or they were all good and you must have been good too, or they're all good, but you're the one devil child. Were you a devil child?
No.
You really had to think about that?
No, I was not a devil child.
For fuck's sake. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. No, of course. No, you were taught a lie. It is literally impossible for a child to be innately unlovable. There's no way on earth that a child hating themselves at any age, let alone 5, is in any way justified in reality. You've been living inside of a jail cell erected with complete lies. But the power of parental imprinting is so great that you believed it was real. Right up until today. And it's just been garbage the whole time. Forgive my language, but your mom was a fucking absolute horseshit parent. And your dad too, if he didn't defend you. Or if he engaged in it as well. What the fuck is that? What are you feeling right now?
Guilt and regret because...
Guilt.
I mean...
Guilt. Oh, I have to hear this one. You haven't had enough self-flagellation in your lifetime that when you get exonerated and the criminals get called for what the criminals have done, somehow you, the victim, feel guilt. So yes, let's blame the victim. I want to know what you are guilty of.
I'm guilty of... I mean, I changed a lot of things when I became a parent.
Fair.
But I'm still my mom.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not my mom. But
how old are your children?
27, 26, and 18.
27, 26, and 18. Just in the last week, I have had clients that I've counseled in the last week who were 72, 61, 33, a 24-year-old kid, couple in their 40s, and a few in their late 50s. Every single one of them, even the ones who are in their 70s and 60s, whose parents were dead, still somewhere inside of them longed to be validated, accepted, approved of, loved by the parent. So you think the fucking story is written because your children are 27, 26, and 18? Oh, fucking hell. Oh, in the words, the great song by Natasha Bedingfield, it's unwritten. The rest is still unwritten. You got so much opportunity. All you got to fucking do is heal you, and everything fucking changes.
I thought for sure that I gotten over this. I thought that I mean, obviously healing is never ending, but
no, man.
I felt like I got past that point with how my mom treated me.
Right. And what we discovered tonight is there was something deeper, and potentially there's something deeper with regard to your father not protecting you or whatever, or maybe you were raised by two moms. I don't know, whatever. But the bottom line is there was something deeper. So in a way, what a blessing to have found this out. It's fucking fantastic. Awesome. God dang. So this explains a lot. So now I can get even closer to helping my kids get even more healing. And if they want to, if we have a closer relationship, great. That's up to them as well. But wow, I get to heal them even more. I get to heal me even more. What a great fucking opportunity. Right. And guilt, over the mistakes you've made as a parent, you know what I always say? Guilt is the mark of good parenting. or guilt is the start of good parenting. You want to know why? Because guilt is a sign you are reflecting on your own behavior. And I've found more often than not in 35 years of counseling people is the shitty parents are the ones that don't reflect on their own behavior. So the mere fact that you're reflecting on it and feeling some guilt, fucking God bless you. But don't make my mom's mistake. She raised 6 kids, taught early childhood at the graduate level, big shot in the field of education and so forth, and rearing children and so forth. And she always said, into her 80s and 90s, she said, it wasn't until my 70s that I finally forgave myself for the mistakes I made in parenting you kids. But if I'm honest, Sven, I wish I would have forgiven myself far sooner. And she was a woman of faith. So she said, I knew God forgave me, but I just couldn't or wouldn't forgive myself. And I guess that was sort of my own self-indulgence. But she wished she would have forgiven herself sooner. Kenny, I want to ask you one last question. Is it possible that the origin of your not believing in your own voice enough to stand up for it, and you finally did by walking away from your partner, but you stayed in it and kept eating shit and kept eating shit. That is a conditioned behavior that had been in you for a long time. And I'd be willing to bet that you potentially indulge in or live in that sort of behavior, potentially in other relationships, not necessarily in your work, maybe in your work, but that will repeat itself if you don't drill down and find the origin of it back there. But is it possible? Are you open to considering the possibility that maybe it finds its origins not just in school, but in fact in your home that you grew up in? Good home. And I'm not saying your parents were bad parents. I am not saying that. Because even good parents, as Marin just attested for us, even good parents can make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can have long-term negative ramifications. So is it possible that your parents made some mistakes that imprinted you that you are only now beginning to sort of see and recover from? Is it possible?
Yeah, of course it's possible. Yeah.
Okay. What I'm going to
I just haven't found it yet.
Fair. That's fair.
Maybe.
That's fair. And to Marin attests that she thought she had done most of her healing, and she just discovered a new one right now tonight, a pretty significant one, through her willingness to dive even deeper. In both y'all's cases, and I don't know if you have or if you haven't, I think you probably have, Marin, but if you haven't read the book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, I'm going to strongly recommend that you do, especially you, Kenny, because that's going to help you drill down. Have either of you read it?
I've read part of it.
Okay.
I get into something and then I stop.
Fair enough. Kenny, have you had a chance?
It's in my Amazon basket, I will admit.
Fair. That's fair. And when you do it, when you each do it, it's most important that you do the journaling exercises in the book, because the book isn't a book of concepts or just a book of concepts. It's the interface. It's a book. It's a workbook that the real action happens when those insights interface with your own life. And very often people will read it but not want to do the journaling exercises. Why? Because it's too scary. Bringing my own shit, my own past, my own feelings up from the past. And Marin, you gave us a sliver of that. You gave us a sliver of that when we began to talk about that past, whoa, those feelings came up, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I'm willing to bet that at least part of the reason that you've not done more of the book, part of it, I'm not saying entirely, but part of the reason may be that, I don't want to face those fucking feelings. And that is X marks the spot. That's where your greatest healing is going to happen. Whatever you're most running from looking at, whatever you're most afraid to feel, that's where your greatest healing is going to be, because that's the hottest thing. It's, in the words you guys have heard me say before, and I quote that quote from Joseph Campbell in the book, the cave you most fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And that cave, all the feelings, all the shit you fear overwhelming you, or the truths you may not want to look at, potentially, Kenny or Marin, that's the area where you got to start fucking digging. And if there's nothing there, hey, there's nothing there. Fine. Nothing lost. But if you're fucking avoiding it, or maybe it's a blind spot, there's potentially a lot there. I'm going to ask if the both of you would just stick around for just a couple of minutes for a little bit of overtime. Would that seem like a fair ask?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Super. Rob, any final thoughts on the show today?
Angels and demons, Sven, angels and demons. We don't have, in my Jewish faith, we don't have a devil. There's only one supreme being. We do have the word Satan in the 5 books of Moses. That refers to an evil inclination, not some sort of fallen angel, superior being. And God, okay, there's something out there. There is a force in the universe that's unknowable. And so I believe in the unknowable, and I refer to it as the infinite. That's what I believe in.
Well, and it's interesting. I remember my Old Testament professor in seminary, Dr. Gold, and a very old man, a very wise man, but he took us through some of the etymology and lineage of Satan. And of course, Elaine Pagels has done quite a bit of writing on Satan, devil, and so forth. And back in Jewish scripture, it wasn't until sort of Jesus' time where Satan becomes Ho Diabolos, the devil.
Right.
But prior to that, it was Ho Shaitan, which was Satan. But even within that, we see an evolution of the role of Satan. And he goes from being, at one point, and we see in Job, where he is fundamentally the prosecuting attorney. So God sends him, he asks to go, and God says, yeah, sure, go fucking, go fuck with Job. You just can't touch his body. You can take away anything you want. You just can't touch his fucking body. And he's sort of the tester. And so he's sent to test, not necessarily to punish. And that's very much a Christian lilt that gets put on later when he becomes Ho Diablo. So it's a very interesting evolution.
Not that I didn't enjoy Good Omens, the book and the TV show. It's fabulous.
Well, wait a minute. Speaking of, okay, yes, you had me watch that. But do you remember back in the 70s, the movie Omen?
Well, that's a different story.
Oh, that was fucked up, man. I've always hated scary movies, but that one fucked me up. Damien. Anyway, enough babble, Tower of Babel, whatever. Casey is just shaking her head. You meatheads, she's thinking. Anyway, you guys, this has been really super duper. Please stick around for a little bit of overtime where we're just going to check in with Kenny and Marin and have a quick minute with them. And on behalf of my entire team here, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Badass Counseling Show. And we all wish you to have a kick-ass day.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by 2-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.